My name is Musa. Predominantly Polynesians and Arabs in Birong in Sydney. They would have just came back from an armed robbery. They'll come back and they're showing me guns. We all came to New Zealand. I signed into probation in Otara. I've never been in that kind of environment before. I joined the prison gang. You know, prison in itself is evil, but Big Boys is kind of like, I'm gonna get you. Parry is like, I'm gonna kill you. I shouldn't be doing this. You know, this is not right. I wasn't raised like this. I've changed not only my ways, but my heart. My name is Musa. I'm Cook Islander. I was born there in May of 1997, and we migrated to Australia from Cook Island due to a hurricane, Hurricane Martin. I'm 28 years of age, and yeah, not that interesting. About 20 boys from Australia, we actually made our way to New Zealand in the purpose of sharing our message of Islam to New Zealanders and Kiwis, and also to visit the Muslims here to actually strengthen them, empower them, and give them a sense of belonging, a sense of environment, trying to uplift their faith. We did about 4 mosque talks here in Auckland. We also went to Wellington, and the brother Dave came with us to Wellington. Gave a talk there. I gave a talk yesterday in Christchurch at the mosque attack in Christchurch, where 51 people were obviously martyred while praying. Right from the airport, we went straight to the cemetery where the 51 martyred brothers and sisters are actually buried, and the Christchurch community actually designated a spot for them and actually designated a whole part of the cemetery just for the Muslims. So I went to Birong Public School in Birong in Sydney. My parents at the time when we were in Australia, my dad was a forklift driver, and the absolute norm, you know, forklift driver, and my mum was actually working for American Express. It was quite isolated. Like, if you were Polynesian, you're only stuck with Polynesian community, you know, especially being Cook Islander. We only ever went to Cook Island functions and church on Sunday, and my mum and dad are heavily involved in the church, so my lifestyle at the time, yes, you did see Polynesians at school, and we pretty much stuck together at school too. Like, we didn't really hang out with Arabs or whites or Asians at school. We stuck to ourselves, but as you got older, you kind of broke out of that kind of thing, because you actually realize that you have more in common with the rest than your own, you know? So, yeah, it was good. Predominantly Polynesians and Arabs, predominantly. Half the school was Polynesian. A lot of NRL players came out of there. It started about year 8 in high school. End of year 7, going into year 8. I started seeing things around my area, Birong, Regent's Park, Bankstown area. And I was actually mates with one of these Arab boys. The more I got closer to him, the more of that life was exposed to me. And so once that life got exposed to me, I was pretty much addicted to what they had going on, you know. And so every time I went to this brother's house, you know, they were doing things around me. They were, you know, smoking drugs. They would have just came back from an armed robbery. They'll come back and they were showing me guns. I haven't told anybody this, but these Arab boys, you know, they were Muslim, you know, Abdul, Ahmed, Muhammad, they were Muslims. They actually exposed the life of crime to me. They seen that I was just in awe when I used to watch them bring out golden pistols and, you know, things that I've never seen before, artillery I've never seen before. And they used to see that I was fascinated in that life. And so I remember one of them, they came up to me one day after we were passing bongs around, and he asked me, I remember his name's Abdul. He came up to me and he said, "Hey, look, we're gonna go for a little bit of bacon and eggs," you know. It was a kind of a code word for break and enter. This was done at night. They used to go out at night and call it bacon and eggs. And coming from a Muslim anyway, called it bacon and eggs. And he told me, "Look, bro, we're going out. We're going to do some bacon and eggs. If you're interested, come with us." And I told him straight off the bat, like, I'm interested, but I just don't know what to do. I've never done that before, you know. Like, He said, don't worry about it, just come with us, we'll teach you the ropes. And it all pretty much started from there. Typical island parents, you get the daily hidings that we all go through and all that. But generally speaking, bro, I come from a very good home. It wasn't like too traumatic for me as a child. Mum and dad, they never drank or smoked, my mum and dad were very into their Christian faith. And, we're talking about a family that gets up every morning at 7 a.m. and pray, 7 p.m. and pray again. We're talking about a family that always made sure that I had, nice shoes and nice clothes. My mum kind of took pride in the way that we looked and the way that we conducted ourselves. So our mum was actually constantly, she used to do funny things with us. My mum used to teach me how to dance, and she actually taught me how to talk to girls. And my dad, he used to make us read books. They knew that we were born from the island, so they actually took pride in educating us, in making sure that we could stand on our own and that we weren't, pushovers, especially being in a big city like Sydney. And if anybody is from Birrong, it's kind of a middle-class suburb. It's not lower class, it's not like Mount Druitt or anything like that. It's middle class, and my mum and dad had full-time jobs, and they were in positions in their jobs of management and things like that. Good childhood compared to most around the world. So at that time, my role models was these Muslim boys that were going out. And even though I had a good lifestyle and I had, my mum and dad, they provided for me to the best of their abilities, I was still fascinated by things that I couldn't have. I don't mean to call them Muslim, but that's the hard fact that they were Muslim and they were my role models as a kid. So after being taught by these Muslim brothers how to obviously perform bacon and eggs, and so I upskilled myself. Then I started getting into home invasions and aggravated robberies and armed robs, and even got into hijacking, and I used to catch trains, and I used to wait at the back of the train station, and I used to jump onto trains, and I used to start from this side of the train and work my way down. And we're talking about the trains that never had cameras. These trains, only the train stations had cameras. So what I used to do is I used to go in all black hoodie, black pants, and by the time I exited the train on the other side of the train, maybe 10 or 12 stations later, I used to exit from the front of the train with just a white t-shirt. I tried to change my description, and I remember I did a whole train once. We're not talking 50 people, we're talking about 12:30 in the morning trains when there's only about 5 people on it. This is when police started getting involved. It's because all these people that I was robbing on the trains were actually catching up with me a month or two later. And I remember I was standing outside my house in Regent's Park, and I remember I was actually standing outside and having a smoke. Remember just a car with 2 white men sitting in it, just looking at me. And I finished my smoke, I went inside, and they came and knocked on the door and placed me under arrest for those robberies that I did. And they sat me down in front of my mum and kind of, brought out the whole investigation in front of my mum, and my mum looked at it, and my mum told them, "That's him." And my mum pretty much gave me up in front of the cops, and my mum gave me a hiding in front of them, and and I went to juvie. That was the first time I ever went to the juvenile justice in Sydney. It was actually me being too prideful that I came out of juvie and I was acting like it didn't affect me in any kind of way. But I remember the first night I went to juvie, bro, I cried, especially the first time I cried. I started missing my family, and I couldn't believe that my life ended up in there. And yeah, I didn't tell them that anyway. I knew heaps of people in there. Like as soon as I got in there, the islanders obviously saw me and they were like asking me where you from and all that. And I was obviously young at the time. I was about 14, 13. And, you know, they pretty much, you know, socks and branded socks was a big thing back then. Like Nike, Lacoste, G-Star socks, you know. So they came over with like branded socks and things like that. And they told me, you know, this is how you look fresh in here, you know. You cuff your pants, and they kind of taught me the ropes of like you know, the lifestyle of juvie. Bro, the first time I went in, I only did about like not even a month, you know. A couple of weeks. I got bail, I got out, and then you know those revolving doors, bro. Like you get out on bail, breach bail, go back in. Get out on bail, breach bail with a fresh charge, go back in. So for the next 5 years, I'm just going through the revolving door, and the longest time I actually stayed out since the first time I went to juvie until I turned 18 was 2 weeks. Yeah, so I got out of Nathan Baxter because I was still in corrections at that time. I was down in Carryong, which is a maximum security for juvenile. I was there and they shipped me up to Baxter about 2 weeks before I got released. And my JJO came and explained to me that, look, we actually think that it's a good idea that you know, go sign into a probation in New Zealand and you go and spend some time there, and you only have to do about 2-3 years of parole and you'll get out. I mean, you'll be a free man, you'll be able to come back. And I was like, all right, yeah, done. They were hoping by the time that I came back that I would have changed my life and things like that. So we all came to New Zealand. I signed into probation in Otara, and my life in New Zealand began. Yeah, so when I was young, this probably the third time that I got arrested in my life. I came here, and we actually came for a family reunion when I was young. I woke up after the family reunion, bro, and I woke up and I couldn't see my brother, and woke up and I was staying with my nana, and I said, Nana, where's mum and dad? And my nana told me, they left you here. And so for about 6 months, I was living in New Zealand and I was staying in Otara, and I went to Tangaroa College for those 6 months and run amok on the street because my nana didn't really like, she had a soft spot for me, so she used to let me do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Slow is probably the word that describes it all. It was very, very slow, and I knew, just due to the lack of public transport in Auckland, I knew that this was the problem why, you know, Otarians only stuck in Otara, and people from Mangere stuck in Mangere, and people stuck in Rewa only stayed in Rewa. It wasn't due to them. Like if they had the opportunity to actually, you know, communicate with the other areas and you know, travel to this area easily and back and forth. And I'm talking about teenagers, you know. If they had that access of being able to, you know, mix and mingle, yeah. So it was like isolation and slow. And so one thing that I did pick up on in Otara, living in Otara at a young age, was that boredom. You know, it was boring, and so we just did whatever to fill that kind of boredom. You know, we were all bored. Yeah, so we went back to Nana. We stayed with Nana. I stayed with Nana again. I caught up with the boys that I used to hang out with when my parents did leave me here. I went and I bumped into them again, and it was almost like I never left, bro. It was almost like, you know, they used to just call me the Aussie boy, and I pretty much like was the influence of getting into crime, and I was pretty much bringing that Sydney vibe here of, hey, let's go and do like, you know, robberies and things like that. So definitely, bro, like a lot of them have never like stolen their lives, and even though they were from Otara, like, you know, all they ever knew was just scrap, They only knew how to fight, you know what I mean? So when I came over from Oz, like, not only were they good fighters, but we kind of sharpened each other, like I would join their scraps and they would join my crimes. So it was kind of like a hand in hand, It was actually a good combo if you think about it. No, so back then, I was still young. I haven't been to prison, and in Otara, if you're from Otara and you're from like a certain street, you'll only like hang out with those boys from that street. So I grew up in East Tamaki, a place called Velvet Crez off Hills Road in Otara, and so I just hung out with the Velvet Crez boys. We just got up to no good, and we didn't really, communicate with the others. Again, even though Otara is isolated, even the streets from Otara are an isolation in itself, kind of thing. I managed to study in a course, and in this course, while I was in this course, I committed a crime during lunchtime. In this course, I also joined a street gang. It was just a street gang from Mangere, even though I was from Otara, but I spent a lot of my time with this Mangere lot. By this time, my family actually moved to Mangere. And so it actually made a little bit more sense to me to actually jump on with the street gang, and where I was staying in Mangere was around the street gang too, and a couple of them attended this course that I was going to, and one day they just approached me, bro, and just asked me, hey, would you like to join the street gang? And this street gang today actually moved into, like, they ended up joining a bigger street gang, and that street gang today is a well-known MC. So I was at course, and one of the members from the street gang was actually getting, kicked out of the course. And, he comes up to me and he says, hey, look, I've just got kicked out. Come with me. It was only about a 10-minute walk to Manukau Mall. Me and him ran into a shop. And so I left a palm print when I went to go mount the counter. We got away that day, but 2 weeks later, my palm print caught up with me, and I went into prison. I walked in the mount and they left 2 doors open. And I just walked into the nearest door. And I walked in there and I just knew, and even though I haven't been to I've been to a correctional facility, but I didn't count that as big boys, but I still had a kind of understanding of what prison is meant to feel like, And I walked into the first door, and I remember, then the door got closed behind me, and I just remember feeling like, this doesn't feel right, like I felt a bit safe. I felt a bit comfortable, eh? And I turned around and knocked on the door, and I was like, hey, what's that other door, They said, oh, that's 6, this is mainstream. And I was like, hey, open the door. And I walked into the mainstream unit, into the mainstream door, and I went in there, and I just felt the prison straight away, And it just felt like evil in there, And I just thought to myself, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be. This feels a bit more like it, So even me being in there, bro, like the screws, they knew that I was young. They come and grab me and they said, hey, look, we just seen your age. You're actually a youth. We've got a youth's prison here in the Mount. And I was like, oh, all right, like I'll go there then. But when I went up to youth, all these brothers were like, I just found them immature, like they were, but a lot of them today are like well-known gang members, and they actually excelled in their gangs, and even though they were all street gangs at the time, they went to go and join, MCs, and it was kind of like the stomping yard for clubs. This is their recruiting ground, and so when I went up to Big Boys, I went up to Kilo 2, and Kilo 2 at the time, they had the kitchen. and I heard that we've lost the kitchen and all that. It's gone all to SEGs now. Everybody knew that I was young. Everybody knew, and they all asked me, "Where'd you come from?" I said, "The youth," and that in itself, like, they asked me, how long did you get? And I was like, 4 years. And they were like, 18, 19, 20, 21. You could have stayed there until you were 21, eh? And I said, yeah, but like, you'll be babysitting, I didn't want to babysit all those young kids, and like, that in itself actually gave me a little bit of respect that, first, I'm from Australia. Second, I didn't know absolutely nobody in prison, bro. Like, I knew no one. Like, I knew a couple of boys from youth, but I didn't know anybody in big boys. And I still decided to go there, and rounds were kicked off straight away, like contenders. This is when, the fight clubs were still going on, and, my name was getting drawn out of the hat and things like that. And I didn't know any better, so I just participated in whatever just to try and prove myself, So a couple of the boys came up to me and they were saying, like, what do you bang on the outside? And I said, look, I'm with this street gang. They're like, oh, they're not really established in here. So you're going to just have to go with the general Crips over here. So I was like, oh, yeah, sweet. I ended up getting high, high classification, the things that I was doing in youth. And then when I got into Kilo, things that I was doing in Kilo, and then I ended up getting shipped to Ngafa, Pukeko. I was in Pukeko. We were actually at war with another gang, and we were just, it was a pretty much all-out war, and I ended up, participating, and I got shipped to Parry. There was a different kind of chill, there was a different kind of evil. Prison in itself is evil, but when you go up there, it's a different form of evil. It's a kind of like, Big Boys is kind of like, I'm gonna get you, but Parry is like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, I've never been in that kind of environment before, so I had to quickly adapt, and I'm still young, so I'm kind of just trying to observe and kind of imitate, my older homies around me, and I was just trying to learn as much as I could. I remember one of the older homies, Leka C, I was with him a lot, and he pretty much taught me the ropes and pretty much taught me how to stand on my own, and he definitely played a part in my upbringing, on becoming a man. I took a lot of my life skills from this man, and so yeah, I had to adapt, I had to listen, I had to observe. He made me a kind of soldier that needed to react without words. He used to always tell me, act now, we can always talk about it later. Act now and, have a meeting later. Act now and resolve it later, So, yeah, we were always, and I was the youngest in the whole, and I was the youngest one there. And so he was kind of like my, like a father figure to me inside. I joined the prison gang. They're also out here as well, but yeah, by that time I've officially been, registered as a Crip, amongst the Crip world kind of thing. And what I mean by registered is that you're, blah, 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 yes, we know blah, 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 he's with us, blah, blah, blah.
Like, there's this, saying about Harry that you've got to join the gang and things like that. Like, is that true?
It is true, bro. Like, only if you were doing life, the rest of the gangsters, they understood that they were just passing through and this is your home. But if you weren't doing life and you were in Parry, yeah, almost 99% of the time you're going to join a prison gang or you're signing over to SEGs. Like, that's just the bottom line. Like, there's no getting past that. It's almost offensive to other gangsters if someone comes in and tries to do time on their own without actually being affiliated or registered with a club or a gang. It's almost offensive, it's almost rude. And so people take it to heart And people think like, it's almost like a prideful thing. Like, you think you can do it, you think you can, all right, let's put that to the test kind of thing. Even if you do prove yourself to one gang, another gang will actually be filled with pride that they couldn't do it, so we'll do it. You know, we'll put them to the test. If you survive all of those, you know, that's just a 1% chance. Like, but let me just say, it's gonna be a very hard time for this bloke. Very hard, especially being in Parry, specifically Parry. Anywhere else you can do it on your own. It's not as political kind of thing. Yeah, because I was with a Crip set that wasn't registered. I had to join a Crip set that was registered. For example, I didn't kind of jump ship or like jump bus. I pretty much just went from the back of the bus to the front of the bus. You know, so I joined an unregistered unknown gang into a registered known gang for the same color, same movement, but I just went from the back of the bus to the front of the bus. Yes, so there was a movement that was happening inside where a lot of our lifers were kind of trying to clean up the Crips inside. So what they did was they put out a registration. If you came in with an unregistered Crip set and your Crip set didn't fall under this 5 numbers, you were told to, if you didn't get offered by any of those 5 numbers, you were told to jump into one of the, you know, you were actually told, hey, look, these guys are willing to scoop you, go and, you know, be with them, kind of thing. You know, someone approached me and said, look, join us, you know, and I did. Yeah, I ended up jumping over 3-6, and especially when you're in those environments, it doesn't happen, brother. You don't think about change in those environments, you know, you're actually thinking about step 1, getting home. That's the only thought process of, if there was, you know, any kind of thoughts of changing, it can't happen until step 1, and that's get home. There's a curse inside, and that curse is that if you have your 21st birthday inside, that you're going to be a lifer. And everybody told me that when I was inside, especially after having my 21st birthday. Shout out to Brother Scruff, Brother Lecker, Brother A+. They were all there for my 21st, and they didn't know, but I've never had a birthday party ever in my life. And that was actually the first birthday party that I've ever had in my life. Like, yeah, so they hooked me up like real good, and I honestly felt like king of the prison when I was in my birthday, you know. So also got a hiding on that day from the boys. I remember I was shaking all the boys' hands, and the last one, he came up to me, Shark, shout out to Shark. He came up to me and just 1-2'd me in the mouth, and as soon as I dropped on the floor, everyone started giving me head kicks, and it was kind of like it's a kind of thing that the Crips do, that when you do have your birthday inside, don't tell anybody. And if you do tell anybody, like, you're going to get looked after, but then the boys are going to pump you so you don't come back inside. And so, yeah. And I was told that I was going to do the rest of my life inside. And so my brother, only when I could see my end date, which was just like a week, bro, not even a week, maybe like 48 hours, that's when it started to sink in. Hey, I actually might get out, you know? And I got out from a 23-hour lockdown. Like, we just finished like having a bit of a standoff with the screws. So I was thinking, and I was trying to fight a charge for an assault that happened in Parry. So I was thinking, nah, they're going to come and charge me for this assault, or they're going to charge me for the assault that just happened. Like, there's no way. And 48 hours before my release, like, you know, there's certain processes that you have to do. Like, the screws will come and say, hey, you got to sign this, you got to sign that, you know. And so when I started signing these papers and I was in 23-hour lockdown, like, it was starting to sink in. Like, well, I actually might think that I'm getting out. This curse might not be real, you know. So even though I was sentenced to 4 years, my brother, I actually was prepared to do life. You know what I mean? Especially getting told that from a young age. And I went in at 18 and I got out at 22. I was actually thinking that, you know, things were going to shit was going to hit the fan and I was going to have to do something out of the ordinary to, again, prove myself to absolutely nobody. Bro, I ended up getting out. I managed to get a job. I've clocked in with the street side of our gang, and so, you know, I was still heavily involved with the gangs and all that outside. One day, bro, my mum told me, hey, look, your older brother's on his way from Villawood. Maybe a week before he came, he WhatsApp called me. And I didn't know that you were allowed phones in there, so I was thinking, ooh, this guy must be a heavy, you know. So when he was there, he had a phone and he was video calling me and stuff. And he was actually trying to ask me, like, yeah, you still in that gang? You still gang banging? And I remember I was WhatsApp calling and he was WhatsApp calling me, and we were actually sitting outside a house that, like, you know, like a crack house, and me and one of the homies were, you know, and we just showed him our firearms and, you know, we were like all day, you know what I mean? And like I was just trying to, you know, this bloke trying to tell me about change and all that, you know. So I was just trying to run amok on him, and by the time he came a week later, you know, he had some serious talks with me and stuff, and he told me that he was Muslim. And that's when the thought of change started to enter into my heart. I actually started to think, like, there should actually be a purpose, not a purpose that I'm used to, but a greater purpose of why I'm here. You know, opened a little window to my life, but there's actually more to it, you know, my brother. Taking that into consideration, like, you know, I've been to this country, that country, and I was always shifted around, and, you know, I was taught big lessons. And so I thought to myself, like this is the life that I've always ever wanted. But when you get to that kind of lifestyle, and that was a lifestyle that I was dreaming of, when you get there, it's almost like, now what? Now what do I do? What do we do? Like, am I just waiting to go back to prison? So I should just carry on with more crime and just wait till I get done and go back to prison? The families that I've caused trauma to, and the families that kind of, you know, can't sleep properly again because of me, and the damages that I've been doing to society and community, and it actually started making me remorseful, brother. I never used to feel remorse for any victim, any shop owner, any person that I've hijacked or anything like that, brother. I never felt sorry for them. But at this time, at that point in time, bro, like, I remember, like, I just put my head down and I was actually feeling remorse. Like, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. You know, this is not right. I wasn't raised like this. My parents are good people. I come from a good family. Then other questions came into my head after thinking and feeling remorseful. Even though I've done time and I've spent maybe 7 years of my life inside, what about the other things that I've done that I haven't got caught for? You know, if I was to get caught for all those things that I've ever done in my life, I'm doing life off the bat. Who holds me accountable to that crime, to those things that I've done, to the things that I've gotten away with? And those thoughts started getting into my mind. So at that time, I looked into Christianity properly, you know. I started reading things that I wasn't, you know, happy with, and it wasn't resonating with me personally. I inclined towards Islam, and maybe after 2 weeks of going back and forth of those serious conversations, I truly believed that I had to answer or take accountability for the things that I've done that I haven't been caught for. You know, even though deep down I knew I might have gotten away with it in this life, I knew deep down that I'm not getting away with it in the next. So as soon as he said that, bro, I looked at my brother and I said, that's enough, bro. Like, you don't need to convince me anymore. Take me to the nearest mosque. I'm becoming Muslim. you know, and I told him I'm going to dedicate my life to it, you know. And I dropped everything else, and I didn't like drop it in a way where boys are Muslim, I can't be doing this anymore. I pretty much just stopped talking and messaging anybody, you know. People were still coming to visit me, but I didn't tell them at the time, but now they know. They would have seen me on their phones and stuff, and if I'm able to slip through the cracks to genuinely change my life, I think it gives them hope. And it gives them a kind of, if this guy can do it, this guy can do it without any repercussions from his gang. But he's doing it genuinely to actually change his life and to actually bring change to not only him, but the people around him and his community. That'll actually give the rest of them hope that maybe I think I just need to genuinely change. There's a difference between actually changing the whole lifestyle than to just get out, you know. There's a difference. Like, there's a very big difference. Like, to get out, no, I think you'd still have to answer to some people about why. But to get out this way, where you just want to get out and not only change your life, but change other people's lives and your community and people around you, they kind of let those guys like be. Like, nah, this guy's like, you know, the heart's changed, not the color, not the vest, not the words. The heart has changed. I've changed not only my ways, but my heart. Don't get me wrong, man, I was still smoking bongs, you know, like I was still smoking weed heavily. You know, I remember, I came back from the mosque and I was still smoking, bro. I still fell, you know, and I was still, you know, I still had old habits that I had to fight off. And that stayed with me for a couple of years, brother, you know, so it was definitely a long journey. But within this time, my brother, you know, God has helped me in ways that even till now that I'm not that grateful for, when I should be so grateful to God that, you know, He's taken me to countries, to Fiji, to Vanuatu, to Papua New Guinea, to up and down New Zealand, all for His sake alone, you know, all for the sake of bringing change, of planting that seed of environment and faith, and giving hope to brothers and sisters in that life that maybe, hey, look at this and see if the heart can change, you know. And so I've been up and down Australia, I've been back to Australia, and I never thought that was going to be a possibility for me. And it's just been a crazy, crazy lifestyle, you know, like, and I'm truly grateful for it, honestly. Anyone pretty much that has a story to tell pretty much gets pushed into that kind of lifestyle of talking to people. Other people around you that kind of like put you in the limelight and says, like, brother, tell them this will benefit them. You know, tell them, brother, you need to say something. You need to, you know, your like you said, brother Dave, to me, you know, your story will have a powerful message, and this is why I agreed to having this, because I know a lot of the people that do watch you would have either seen me inside or part of the same gang. Yeah, I do hope that when people do see this, that they can hear the powerful message that I might have, and I hope that if I can change, if God can change me, and you're wanting change, God will also change you. Don't lose hope in it. If I know that you might have a story to tell, then you might be in this seat having a conversation with Dave, you know? Because a lot of us have stories to tell, but it's not a story worth sharing if you're still stuck in where you are. And I hope that you can get out of it and inspire others to also get out of it. Probably the only message is that no one in this world who thinks that they can do things without being held accountable will ever get away with it. If you do get away with it in this world, just know, my brothers and sisters, that you will be held accountable in the next world. And so decision making is actually very important for us to make sure that we're not oppressing our society, we're not oppressing people, and we have a genuine concern for their lifestyle, for their well-being. And if you're stuck on that pathway of making wrong decisions, I ask God to make it easy for you to change your decisions. Or, if not change it, to think about it. Thank you, Brother Dave.